Massive weekend in the sporting calendar coming up. The Aintree Grand National meeting starts this very afternoon. The world's most famous race takes place at Saturday tea time. We are hearing, though, that animal rights activists could try and sabotage this year's event. They're a group calling themselves Animal Rising. A Daily Mail investigation claimed that they plan to use ladders to get over the security barrier at Aintree and cut through the fence before the main race at the end of the three-day festival. Back in 1993, the Grand National was delayed after a similar protest. The race eventually was voided after a number of false starts. Then 4 years later, 60,000 people had to evacuate the course in Merseyside following an IRA bomb threat minutes before the start. Alex Lockwood is from Animal Rising, joins us in the studio. Alex, what exactly is going to happen this weekend?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on. I think we're in this country, we're rightly proud of being animal lovers. Sometimes our values don't meet that standard, and that's especially in the food system, but also at events like the Grand National. We want to go there and stop the harm. What we're asking people to do is come and join us at 9:30, from 9:30 in the morning outside the gates, and protest as we are allowed to do, and see if we can disrupt the race.
Are you going to try and stop the most famous race in the world? Is that your plan?
Yeah, we don't believe that horse racing is right. We want to stop the harm. I mean, one horse dies every 2 or 3 days in racing in the UK. 50% of the horses who end up in UK slaughterhouses have racing passports. You know, it does harm the animals, and we're against that. So yes, we will try to disrupt the race.
But these horses are bred for racing. So if they weren't bred for racing, then the argument is they wouldn't be born at all. Surely it's better to be bred for horse racing and to be cared for as they are than not being born at all.
Yeah, I mean, that is the definition of breeding, forcing animals into life for profit. It's very similar to the food system, actually, the way that animals are, horses are bred for the races. I mean, we've got solutions to that. We would like to see the huge amounts of money that the betting industry and trainers make from the industry, use that money to put the horses into a good retirement. We'd like to see a lot of the agricultural land in the UK freed up and rewilded so that we could actually see wild horses. I think one of the real tragedies, isn't it, that people who do love horses and love the racing, it's the only way that they can actually see horses. You know, we don't have wild horses in this country, and hardly anyone's ever seen one. The only way to actually get close to these wonderful creatures is to actually have them bred for profit. And then when they can't run very fast anymore, they're either shipped off, sold off, or shot or slaughtered.
It's very easy to monetize it, though, isn't it? Because there are some trainers and some jockeys right at the top of the game, some breeders who do make an awful lot of money out of horse racing. There are much smaller stables and jockeys and trainers who don't make an awful lot of money out of it, and they do it for the love of the sport.
Yeah, and my mum was one of those people. She had like a 70th share in one horse. I mean, she worked in the betting shop and she loved the horses. When she remarried, she had her hen do at Epsom Derby. So I know firsthand the pleasure that people get from from the relationship with horses and horse racing. But if I sat my mum down for 2 hours and said, look at these videos of them breaking their necks when they go over the first fence, like Up for Review did in the Grand National in 2019.
So they're an extreme example. Only 4 horses have perished in the Grand National in the last decade.
A horse dies every 1 or 2 days in the UK, and about 40 have died in the Grand National event since the year 2000, and we think that's wrong. I mean, think about it, if that was footballers, like 20 a month footballers, 20 a month gymnasts falling off their equipment and dying, I mean, we would stop the sport immediately. And the industry calls the horses its participants, its athletes, and I don't think that's very high welfare to see 20 of their athletes die every month.
So you're going to turn up at Aintree this weekend. You've just admitted publicly that your intention is to try and stop this race, a race that many people love. It's the most watched horse race in the world. It's the most gambled on horse race in the world as well. Do you think that necessarily is helpful to your cause? Is that going to get you a lot of public sympathy if you try and disrupt people's entertainment on Saturday tea time?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that argument, absolutely. Protest has been part of democracy for as long as there's been democracy. And we don't think it's right that business as usual should go on when animals are being harmed. And we're sorry for the disruption, but we stand by our morals. We stand by the fact that we think that this business as usual should stop. I mean, we stopped dogfighting. We stopped sort of like fox hunting. It's a dying industry. 80% of people under 40 no longer want to go to horse racing because they know it's unethical. So we're helping it into retirement, like all of the good horses should be.
I know a lot of people under 40 who thoroughly enjoy a day at the races, by the way. Let's hear from Dickon White. He's one of the directors at Aintree, reacting to this possible protest at the weekend. He was speaking to TalkSPORT too.
We've obviously been in regular meetings over the past, shall we say, 6 months about this. And, you know, yeah, it's focused a little bit of minds in the last few weeks. But, you know, we absolutely appreciate that if people want to come here and peacefully demonstrate, they absolutely have the right to do that. And we will work with the police and security teams to allow that to happen.
Before Darren Ambrose comes in, that's the key, isn't it? Nobody is against peaceful protesting. There is a way for you to get your message across without using ladders, without cutting through fences, without actually stopping the event.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like, we could stand outside and be polite and hand out flyers, and that's never stopped anything. You know, the point is we need to have a massive public conversation about our relationship with animals. And like this is the first of an event, this is the first of a campaign of events over the summer to really bring attention to and shine the spotlight on our treatment of animals. And that's particularly in the food system, but also in events like this, because it's just wrong, we feel, to exploit animals for profit.
But these animals are extremely well treated. Have you actually made any effort to go out and visit a working trainer's yard and looked at the love and the care that the stable staff there give to the horses? Have you done that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for example, I've done that. I've also interviewed lots of farmers in the farming system. We walk our walk as well, and we're out there looking at these things, and we understand that, you know, in the industry, people would say that they do love them, but you don't love something and exploit it. You don't do it for profit. You know, that is not the way that we should be in 2023 thinking about how we have a relationship with animals. And we want to see that exploitation of animals, particularly in the food system, particularly in sporting events, come to an end, because I think we as a nation, we can have a conversation about that. But to get that conversation, we actually need to grab people's attention, and sorry for that, but we do, and that's why we're trying to do what we're doing.
I mean, what is it that you're expected to gain out of this? As Crookie said, the most viewed sporting event, one of the most viewed sporting events. The last protest, 1993, it's only got bigger. It's only been viewed by more people. Do you expect there more frustration? It's going to bring more eyes onto the sport, and it's going to have a negative impact on what you're trying.
I think you're in danger of losing more sympathy than you'll gain.
Yeah, I mean, we of course, we've thought about that, but what we need is a public conversation about our treatment of animals, and that's what we're doing it for. But we're also doing it to stop the harm for the animals. Like, you know, as your bulletin just said, you know, the runners and riders for the Grand National have just been announced. Some of those horses have better odds to die than they do to win, and we don't think that's right.
How many are you expecting to turn up? I mean, listen, how many people is in the world? Not all of them are animal lovers.
No, but we know as a nation, we know in the UK we are a nation of animal lovers. When we do surveys about it, people talk about that. People will stop and do a lot for animals. And when they see a horse rescued from a ditch, for example, by the fire service, everyone's sharing it on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? We do care for these animals. And actually, but when you know, I would challenge you guys, you know, you're the journalists on the sports programme, show people the other side of the industry. Show them when the whistleblower jockey comes out and says, here's 18 young horses, foals shot because they can't make any money. They're not profitable for the industry. Show your, you know, make your listeners hear that as well.
But I think it's too easy, isn't it? I mean, what you're suggesting is that everybody involved in horse racing, be that the punter, be that the trainer, be that the jockey, be that the organisers of events like the Grand National, they're not animal lovers, and that isn't the case. That's too sweeping a statement.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I've said that. You know, for example, my mum, you know, she was in the industry. She was a bookie. She was an owner. She went to Epsom
How does she
Derby.
feel about what you're planning to do at the weekend?
Well, sadly, she died a while ago. But
how would she feel?
She would feel pretty proud, actually. I think, of the fact that we are taking a stand for the animals themselves. Look, these are old industries. You know, like horse racing it's been called the sport of champions, the sport of kings for a long time. But we had dog fighting, and that is no longer something that's socially acceptable. We had fox hunting, that's no longer socially acceptable. And what we've got to do is like have this bigger conversation about the way we treat animals everywhere in our society, particularly in the food system, because actually, you know, 2,000 horses in the UK do go into the slaughterhouses every year. Half of them do have racing passports. That pales into insignificance when you look at the number of pigs and chickens, you know, and the pollution and all of the problems that comes with the way that we exploit animals in this country. Now, those who are jockeys and trainers in the industry, in the racing industry, I'd say, look, you like these animals, you love these animals, you care for them. Let's get them out of harm's way.
Two final questions for you. One, do you think you're going to be successful in trying to stop the Grand National? And two, you can't truly believe, as you've said, that you are going to end the sport of horse racing.
One, I'm not I wish I could tell the future and I'd put a bit of money on the lottery, but I don't know. I would hope that we do enough to raise a public conversation about sort of the way that we treat animals. You
said you're going to retire the sport of horse racing.
We'd love to, but again, unfortunately, I don't have that power, and I wish I did. But what we can do is have a really good, big public conversation across this nation about the way we treat animals.
Well, Alex, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your views. Day one of the world-famous Grand National Festival gets underway today. TalkSPORT has all the action covered. Obviously, Alex won't be listening. From 1 o'clock, H&J have 3 live races.